Welcome. It's 6 p.m. Monday in New York. It's 9 a.m. here in Sydney. In Australia, we have another episode of The Mind Behind Leadership. I'm very lucky to say today we have Sandra Kearney on with us. Look, one of the things that we've noticed just over the last kind of 18 months that we've been doing this show is that leaders are dealing with lots of different things. It's a moving target on a regular basis. Interestingly, the fundamentals seem to still be there. They seem to, I was just looking at some notes and kind of the things that we're working with leaders a couple of years ago still stand really true today. And we're going to put that to the test. We're going to discuss that in a little bit more detail with Sandra, who is right on the front line with making sure that leaders are ready to deal with everything that's going around at the moment. So let me just introduce Sandra Kearney. As I say, Sandra spent, I think it's about 8 years now in learning development space. She launched her own firm, Human Power Solutions, in December of 2019. And it was an immediate success due to a large part in relationships. So all about a network and a focus on client experience. Sandy, or Sandra, as I always call her, she always gets a proper name with me, has ability to network, serve others, connect with people, make sure that, you know, there's those discussions going on a regular basis and looking to make sure that people are looked after, has brought not just success, but that continuity during the last couple of years where we've had some serious changes. Sandra earned her Master's in Organizational Leadership from Nichols College in 2018, so she's very clever, and has a BS in Chemistry from Assumption University. She lives in Westborough, Massachusetts, and is the mother of 3 kids, 2 grandchildren, and has 5 siblings. Sandra.
Hi.
It's great to see you again.
It was nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
There we go. So I'm calling in from sunny Sydney. What's the weather like over there at the minute?
It is sunny and balmy 52 degrees in the Boston area.
Right.
So it's not too bad today.
So you're in Boston. Are you okay being on a New York radio station? Are we good with that?
It's fine. It's fine. Okay. I'm not a big Red Sox fan, so we're good.
Oh dear, we got the sports references in already. Okay. What attracted you to organizational leadership and development? Because this wasn't your original passion, was it?
No, it actually wasn't at all. I didn't even know that this kind of even existed. And when I owned my fitness center, I had hired a business coach to help me in the last couple of years to figure out what I wanted to do, which direction I want to go into. And, you know, kind of looking at the lifestyle and what he did for our organization was pretty phenomenal. So when I decided to sell the center, he asked me to come work for him, and I said, I'll give it a shot. And I really went in there in a sales capacity, just strictly to go and sell the training. What I found after the first year was that I loved it. I loved what we did. I loved going into organizations and kind of figuring out what's going on and really get to the root cause of what's happening. And that was just really, really fun. And I've always loved to be around people and just get what's happening with them. So I decided to go back and get my master's in organizational leadership because I just didn't think I knew enough to really go in and do those kind of deep dives. And this is what I will do for the rest of my life.
That's a big statement.
Yeah, but I love it. It's so fun.
How cool is that? No, I have no idea what I want to be when I grow up. This is great. Curious. So you just automatically you left school and opened up a fitness center. Is that correct?
No.
So what brought you to the fitness center?
A lot of things, just life. So I started my career off in hospitality. I worked for Marriott for 6 years. I worked for Brinker International, who owned Chili's, for 3. And I always liked the hospitality space. I was always in that arena. Thought I would open up a restaurant because that's really what my love is food. But had my kids, and I did restaurant lifestyle wasn't conducive to raising children. So my kids had some different issues, and I was home for a little while and went and got my personal training certification because I just thought it was flexible, and went to work for a gym and thought I could do that better. So I opened up my own, and that's it was kind of transition into life. But being a personal trainer, the fitness center I owned for 7 years was a corporate based fitness center. So we had people from the public, but we really catered to executives. So I spent a lot of time with different levels of CEOs and vice presidents and one-on-one time. And being a personal trainer, you're working with them on their personal stuff. You don't really dive into business, but it does kind of meld together. So now being on this side of it, one of our biggest philosophies is that your CEOs and your vice presidents are human. They get up in the morning, they take a shower, they have breakfast, and they leave. And I actually, I started off on that side, knowing that they're just human beings, just like everybody else. So it's interesting how life happens, I guess.
I'm curious. This is really interesting. We've discussed this before. I don't think you've ever mentioned that part of it about who your clients were. So was there a point where you were training someone and they said something or they did something, or there was a continuation of a conversation where you went, wow, that's just changed my view?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're with these people twice a week at 5 or 6 in the morning for an hour before they head out, or after work when they're stressed out and they've had a day. It's kind of like being a hairdresser. You hear everything. You're a safe third party. You don't know anyone that they're working with. So we just talked about a lot of different things. And because I had had a lot of different experiences in corporate America, and fairly smart person, it was really interesting to me to have these conversations.
Yes. Yeah. And what were the surprises with it? Was it just that they were human? You kind of mentioned that they get up and do these regular things, or was it something else?
Yeah, their stresses are just like everyone else's. They have kids with issues. They've got parents that they're taking care of. They're no better or no worse. They just make a little more money and have a higher title. But the problems are bigger, I think, at some level. But I really, they're just, I think when they came in to see me, it was just relaxed, I can just be myself. And I think that was the biggest thing, is just how they're all human. Everybody's human. We're all the same, regardless of our title.
I'm curious. We do hear this a lot, that it's lonely at the top. And I know that there's a number of books about it, and there's been a lot of kind of podcasts and everything just talking about how leaders deal with that. I'm just curious, just from what you've said there, whether we should be kind of speaking to the employees a little bit more and letting them know what's happening up there when decisions are being made.
I think that's a big part of the executive leadership training or sessions or workshops. When we're doing a retreat with executives, or even when we're having one-to-one sessions with executives, my question is, how well do you know your employees? I think because that's just real key. Employees aren't going to come up to an executive and go, "Oh, how was your weekend?" until they're given permission, either by the executive doing that, or that's just the culture of the company. So I firmly believe that the executives are the ones that drive that kind of relationship. It's not going to come from the employees, I don't think.
So the other thing, to allow people to access, to kind of understand what's going on a daily basis, the stresses and the strains and everything, we need to be approaching and making ourselves a little bit more open. Yeah,
just more visible. If you work I was at a manufacturing company last week or 2 weeks ago, and that was one of the biggest things, that it was a fairly new CEO, and and they were like, we don't really know him. I mean, he worked here, but we don't really know him. And that was kind of the feedback that we got from the production area. So that was one of the first things we went back to the executive team, said, start walking around. Don't look for problems. Just say good morning. See how people are doing.
Now, here's the thing. Don't look for problems, because that tends to be, go out and it's the difficult conversations we have, and it's the regular ones that we need to have. Right. Just the everyday conversations. There's an exercise that I do, and I do it almost every single session now, which is just kind of 5 minutes of getting people to get to know each other in a slightly structured way. And I continuously have people who've worked together for years, know each other personally, and all of a sudden more information pops out in 5 minutes than they've ever had in the past. Yeah. We do a really fun exercise that we've been doing lately, that we have everyone write down on a piece of paper why they joined the industry.
And so the whole group writes it down, like why they joined this particular industry. And then one of us will read it out and they have to guess who the person is that wrote it down. So it really, it's really kind of a cool exercise. So they're like, oh, I didn't know that your uncle worked here, or, I didn't know that you did this first. And so those conversations are pretty, they're pretty funny. So just doing things to connect people.
And I know you and I have spoken about this before. One of the things that I always take into any sessions that we're working with, even if it's in-house, everybody's got a different story, a different journey to work, different family situation. They went to bed at a different time. They got up at a different time. So to treat everybody the same is just, we can't do it. Yet
right.
But in training, that tends to happen. We kind of put in a syllabus and say, do 1, 2, and 3, and 4 will work. And that's actually not the case.
It's not. It really isn't. It's so, I don't know. I think you and I have talked a lot. The training sessions are training, but if they're more workshop style where people are actually working together to fix issues, that's really what I think is the really important thing. And when they do a DISC assessment or they do a predictive index and you realize like who the team is and what that is, and putting those people together to say, hey, this is how this person likes to be communicated to. This, you need this person in this conversation because they're going to look at it from another lens than you are, than your whole group. Right. So the word training is challenging because it's like you're training a dog.
Yeah, right? It's more, absolutely. So training isn't kind of one way. I suppose training and teaching suggests it's one way, whereas this is more a facilitation. We'll talk a little bit about, you just kind of raised something there about assessments, etc. And we'll talk about data a little bit later, because one of the things that certainly is jumping out is that we don't have enough data that what's going on. And there's been so much change in the last year. Also, I'm not going to let you get away with this. We spoke about fitness centres. I'm really, really curious how somebody has a degree in chemistry and ends up with a fitness centre as well. We're going to go for a break in a moment. And when we come back, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about data, and then we'll get into what's really happening within businesses over the last few months since we've last spoken, and just kind of find out what the different approaches are. Are we seeing something different? Because one of the unique things we've got here, Sandra, is that you're seeing it in the US, I'm seeing it in Australia. We're slightly behind the curve here on what's happening. Everybody's going through the same things, but in a slightly different way. So let's kind of put that to a test. We'll come back after these messages, and we'll just dig in that a little bit further. You're listening to Talk Radio. .nyc, the mind behind leadership, and we're lucky enough to have Sandra Kearney with us today. We'll be back after these.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business, or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant. And on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you on edge? Hey, we live in challenging, edgy times, so let's lean in. I'm Sandra Bargeman, the host of The Edge of Every Day, which airs each Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc. Tune in live with me and my friends and colleagues as we share stories and perspectives about pushing boundaries and exploring our rough edges. That's The Edge of Every Day on Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Mind Behind Leadership live on talkradio.nyc, live from Sydney in New York, talking to somebody in Boston. This is all a bit weird. I'm curious, you mentioned the exercise that one of the things you do is kind of allow everybody to see the background of other people, how they got into a business, how they kind of got to that point. How did you go from chemistry to a fitness center?
I think going to college at 18, I thought I wanted to be a doctor. So that's what I majored in. Took a year off, and I just really loved hospitality. So I put my way through college. I cooked. I was always in the back of the house through summers down Cape Cod where I grew up, and through school, made pizzas, all that. And I just love the industry. So when I was going to take the year off, Marriott actually had our contract at my school. And I was a student manager there. And I was like, I'm taking a year off. And she's like, why don't you apply to the management program at Marriott? And that was it. So it was just one of those things. But what chemistry has provided with for me is processes, because there's always an answer. There's always a process to get to the end. So I always look at everything that's happened, and that's just foundationally, I'm very process oriented. So, it really has helped me, especially in this arena where we're coming up with training plans and we're trying to go after problems.
What's the challenge with coming up with training plans and kind of deciphering the part information that you get? Because that's how it is a lot of the time, is, people don't kind of know what information they need to be giving out.
Yeah. A lot of times we will talk when we're meeting with our teams and the managers, and if we're doing a discovery day, I'll come up with, or one of our team will come up with, hey, this is what we think. And this is what we plan to do, and we warn them. Oftentimes we get in and the plan changes completely once we really get in there. You do the best you can. You ask as many questions as you can, but it's only as good as the information that you get.
So we're back onto data.
We are. Love data.
Talk me through how do you get data to put you into a position where you've got that confidence that you're saying, this is where we need to be going. This is what we're seeing that's not necessarily jumping out in a business. What kind of things do you do?
Well, so there's two kinds of data, right? There's the personality data, which is the DISC or predictive index. We use predictive index for the most part with our clients, but we, DISC and HBDI, you name it, the science is all the same. So, we get the data on the team and what the team composite is, but then there's also the employee engagement data. So, we oftentimes will ask our clients, have you done an employee engagement survey? Do you use software like Illumo? What is it that how are you gauging how engaged your employees are? And I think that is really important if you have both of those, because then you kind of have a pulse of the organization. The other thing that we do is we love to do our discovery days where we meet our executive team and we sit down for an hour and a half with them on what they perceive as being the issues, and then have a meeting with the middle management team and what do they perceive as the issues, and then have a meeting with some focus groups in production or wherever they are, and then kind of marrying those things together. So the questions are really the same with all three of those groups. You can really get a lot of information out of that, out of those sessions. So we really like to do that.
Why are those important?
Well, everybody has a different perspective, and everyone's coming from a different lens, and everyone is coming from a different walk of life and different philosophies. We always talk about how everyone has their own stories. You've got your story that you have in your head that you've been told. And I think people at different levels in the organization, either if you're at the executive level, sometimes you're thinking the whole picture, the end game and all that. And, people in a lower level are thinking, can I put food on the table, and do I have enough money for gas or for my medicine, right? Look at the gas prices now, it's big. So, just getting all those different perspectives and what's important to everybody, and how can you really relay that message all around so people feel like they're being heard on every level.
It's interesting. I've seen so many different ways of looking at employee engagement, gathering that type of data. How do we make sure that's accurate?
I think offering that safe space, doing it live is one thing, like really getting groups together and offering a really safe space. If I'm sitting down with a group, they get it. They know that's just my vibe, right? So they know whatever they say is what they say. And, for me, when I'm talking to them to any level, it's, if you don't tell me, we don't know, and we can't create and design programs that are going to be effective here. So, if you're looking for a check the box training and you think you're telling me what I want to hear, we're not your company. So that's really, I think it benefits everyone in the organization if they're honest and open. So
what are you seeing at the moment? Where's the focus coming out now?
Emerging leaders, the middle management, new supervisor, hybrid environment is really hard to navigate. Managers who were okay before the pandemic are now being kind of like, they're wide open now. It's now they're being exposed. So and the lack of skill and the lack of training. The promote from within is great if there's a training program to allow them to succeed. A lot. What we're seeing now is those poor managers that have been promoted to management with zero training and support. So we're seeing a lot of turnover in that regard, a lot of frustration, and just the staffing piece. We need to retain our employees, and we need to retain our employees by treating them the right way and be able to talk about conflict and delegate and all those good things.
Where are we with, again, really curious about this because this seems to tie in. Where are we with what was known as a few months ago, the Great Resignation? It seems a really old term now. I don't know why. It just seems to be out of date. And it was only like 3 or 4 months ago that it was the in thing that everyone's talking about. Where are we with that kind of that workforce movement?
It's not resignation. They're moving to environments that they want to be in. They're moving to, employers that will allow people to work hybridly or fully remote. I mean, that's what you're seeing. And then you're seeing dollars being thrown at people. I mean, I talked to one prospective client today, and he's like, I'm losing my best person. She took an offer she can't refuse, and we can't beat it. That's what's happening. So talent is, they are in control right now. So I don't really think it was a resignation. I just think it was people looking for a better situation.
Okay. And so that's still very relevant at the moment over there.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, definitely.
Okay. What can employers do about it? What do we think?
Improve their culture, talk to their employees more, find out what they want, what they need, be decisive, set clear expectations, but have conversations about those expectations.
Is this not just soft stuff? Improve culture and talk more and everything. Why does that make a difference?
That's what people are looking for now.
So they're looking for that connection rather than kind of the 9 to 5. I go in, I do this process, I do this function, and
why can't I mean, it's just not everyone, but a lot of people want that flexibility. The hybrid, they working 2 days a week or 3 days a week in the office is really working for a lot of people. That's what we're finding. People definitely want to go back to the office, but they don't want to go back full time. And so I think that if the job can be done, both ways, have a structure, put some structure in place around it, like everyone's in the office on Thursdays, so we can all be together on Thursday, whatever that is. Right.
Yeah.
But it is a culture shift, but it can be done really well.
It's interesting. One of the things that happened when this kind of hybrid started, or where we were forced to move and work from home, was that people did kind of that demarcation. They didn't know when to stop working, when to start working. They were answering emails at all times. Well, I heard from so many companies, this is great. Everybody's been really productive. And right away, we knew that was going to be a problem. It meant that people weren't switching off. So they weren't looking after themselves. How is that working? You mentioned processes. Is that changed, do you think?
I think so. One of our focuses is if we're doing a training plan for our companies, we always put in a workplace wellness module in there. to help people, like how can you manage your time?
Mhm.
What kinds of things can you do to distress yourself? That's a big part of what we do, because I'm a firm believer in that. I think that, employers and managers need to take the lead. They need to take a break. They need to shut down. They need to turn themselves on red from 12 to 1, or that they're taking a lunch, because what we're seeing what's happening is that your leaders are just going. Everyone is just going. They're working. They're not taking the downtime. So the employees are like, I can't take that. I've got to work the same way. So we're asking our leaders to, you need to set the example of that. This is really what you want them to do. And you need to check in and say, hey, have you taken a break today? And if not, shut down and go, regardless of what's going on. 10 minutes isn't going to kill anybody.
What's the danger if that doesn't happen? That's a really interesting. I've seen that in so many different ways, obviously. But I think you've just kind of framed it slightly differently there. What's the danger if the leaders don't do that?
That they're going to create a culture where people are afraid to take that time, or they just don't know how to ask for it, or they just don't know how to set their own boundaries. And then that burnout happens, and then all of that, and then all of a sudden they are they're losing top talent to go somewhere else that is conducive to that environment. So that's a danger. You're going to lose people.
Interesting. One of the things that we've done in the office, kind of everybody in on a Monday and a Friday. Apart from that, it's a bit of a free rein, being able to work away. When we come back after the break, I'm really curious to dig into what challenges we're seeing with that remote working. Because we talk about it's working, we're getting productive, people are enjoying it. But I know that there are challenges as well, especially around communication when we're looking at. And you mentioned company culture earlier. A great believer in not playing it safe, doing something slightly different. So I'm just interested to find out if you've got any companies that are doing something that just that little bit different to engage people to see it in a slightly different way. And you mentioned something earlier. How do you know when you've got enough, or how do you know when you've got enough knowledge? You said earlier you didn't know if you knew enough about something, and then when you did, you moved on. I'm curious about how do we help people to know that they know enough actually to take a risk, because everything I'm hearing today is about taking risks. You've taken lots of risks in what you've done, applying, studying for chemistry, then deciding to take a change, becoming a fitness instructor, then opening up a fitness center, then having a coach, which is a risk, a business coach, and then changing industry completely. So kind of want to understand where risk comes into this for leaders is going forward. You're listening to the Mind Behind Leadership. We have Sandra Kearney from Human Power Solutions on. You're on talkradio.nyc. We'll be back after these.
Hi, Joseph Franklin McElroy, host of the new podcast, Gateway to the Smokers. It airs on talkradio.nyc every Tuesday night from 6 p.m. to 7. Every episode is dedicated to memorable experiences in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park and surrounding areas. This show features experts and locals who expound upon the richness of culture, history, and adventure that awaits you in the Smokies. Tune in every Tuesday from 6 p.m. to 7 on talkradio.nyc.
Are you passionate about the conversation around racism? Hi, I'm Reverend Dr. TLC, host of the Dismantle Racism Show, which airs every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc. Join me and my amazing guests as we discuss ways to uncover, dismantle, and eradicate racism. That's Thursdays at 11 o'clock a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a small business trying to navigate the COVID-19 related employment laws? Hello, I'm Eric Sauver, employment law, business law attorney, and host of the new radio show, Employment Law Today. On my show, we'll have guests to discuss the common employment law challenges business owners are facing during these trying times. Tune in on Tuesday evenings from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to the Mind Behind Leadership. We have Sandra Kearney on here from Human Power Solutions. Sandra, it's interesting. We're just talking about data, and I knew I had something here, and I've just grabbed it. A McKinsey report from the end of last year, from December last year, top reasons why people leave their job without even another in hand. 40% of them, uncaring leaders. Uncaring leaders. And just under that was unsustainable work performance expectations. So, we can talk about a whole lot of other ideas and thoughts and everything like that, but when uncaring leaders comes into it, this changes the game completely, doesn't it?
It does. And it's been a hard transition for our leaders to wrap their brains around that. It really has been. So I know you kind of made fun of me a little bit about being soft, but it's essential.
No.
Like, they're not soft skills anymore. They're essential skills. You have to have them. I had to give you a little hard time, Graham.
Yeah, I don't think I was giving you a hard time. I think it was being provoking. I think that's it. That's the thing. So let's talk about culture. Seriously, let's talk about culture, because I hear this word thrown around so many times, and there's so many things, and we have Pizza Friday or something, and that creates a culture. Or one of the things, let's talk about workspace. Actually, really interesting. This was a company I was heavily involved with in New York, was WeWork, and how there's so many programs now come out about what happened there as a business model. But let's look at what the culture was that they tried to create. Having free coffee, breakout areas, beer, all this kind of stuff. That's kind of labeled as culture. That's stuck in the box. But how do you see company culture?
I really see it as how people are treating each other. That's really how I see it. How decisions are made, what kind of collaboration they have, how their meetings are run. Is there respect for time? I think so much of it. Yeah, you can do pizza and you can do whatever, like all that stuff is all good, fine. But in the end, the real culture, it says you think about your family, right? You think about how you want, you want to have this trusting environment where, hopefully where you can, talk to people and share ideas and innovate together, collaborate versus those silos, that's when I think about culture. That's what we are always trying to create. We're working in the auto body industry heavily right now and so we're doing a lot with them. And last week I was with one of our groups, and I don't do a ton of training myself these days, but I pick and choose the clients and the things that I love to do. And last week I was with one of my shops, and we had people from paint, from the welding, from management. We had everyone in the group, everyone together. And there was a bunch of side conversations that were going on, I was kind of asking them certain processes and things that they were doing, the customer experience. And they solved a bunch of problems that day because they were in silos. And they didn't understand why one group was doing this. They just didn't know. And I got an email today from the owner saying, hey, can we talk about creating some ambassador committee groups? Because what we did last week was he's like, there was a lot of breakthroughs because we were talking interdepartmentally. So we have a call next week to talk about, how do we create ambassador groups? And this is an auto body industry. This isn't your CPA firm or your law firm. This needs to happen everywhere.
But this isn't you. We've been talking about this since the 60s and 70s. Jim Collins writes about it. We talk about silos. Why is this still happening?
I have no idea. I really don't. I think people get comfortable. They get comfortable in their roles. They get comfortable in their positions. It's hard to change. It's hard to, like we were saying before the break, it's hard to take risks because risks are scary. but the reward at the end is pretty incredible. So.
And here's the thing, most people have actually taken lots of risks in their life. They just don't necessarily recognize it as a risk at the time. When you're looking at about one of the things I always think is when we talk about silos, we talk about people working, we hear these words and we actually don't dig into what the meaning of them are, or what the impact of it is, or how does it show up? How do we know that that's happening? So we kind of, anytime I speak to a company, we talk about silos, they say, yes, that's not good. I'm not convinced they actually know why it's not good, or what it actually means, or what a silo looks like. And I know in organizational development, learning development, that a lot of the times we use kind of jargon. And sometimes it's just breaking that down and saying, that's how it feels. That's the result of it. This is what comes out when you do it that way. So I don't care if we call it a silo or anything, as you say. It just like we just kind of need to do something slightly differently. So how do we get that?
I think it's lack of trust. I think people stay in their comfort zone because it's lack of trust, either trust themselves or trust in the other people. So, and I think you're right. When we use terms, all these kind of terms that I've never been a big fan of, it's like when you're personal training and, oh, well, you have to, kind of train your hip flexor and your whatever. It's like, no, it's your hip, roll your hip out. It's, all the jargon is fine. But give people some things that they can understand, It's so...
First time I ever went to a personal trainer, he was asking me to do things. I'm like, I have no idea what part of the body that is. I've just no idea.
Yeah. It's like, I don't care how
much
you know.
Point. It's a really good analogy. Yes.
It's like, you don't care how much you know. It's what results can you get? What results? What is the end result? I'm not a jargon person, but I know that we'll get you the results you're looking for. Things will change.
Yeah. I was out for I was out in a social gathering a few weeks ago, and someone asked me what I did. And when I spoke about leadership development, they said to me, get this, I don't believe in any of that. That's just rubbish. And I went, wow. And she said, do you actually believe in it? And I went, quite possibly, yes, it's something I do. And I thought, how do I persuade someone that actually doing something? The only thing I could come up with was look at every one of the biggest companies and most successful companies in the world. They invest more on their people than anything else. Not in technology, not in everything else. The technology is only used if the people are there for it. It's only used properly and the creativity comes not through not through technology. It's the people, it's the brain power that actually does it and giving them that safe space, which then takes us into risk. How do we create that environment where risks? You mentioned emerging leaders is the big thing at the moment. I agree. We're seeing that exactly here. That's exactly what's going on. People are kind of look at succession planning, or even from graduate level. Graduate programs are now coming in with leadership elements to it. Of how do we add in those, if we want to call them soft skills, which I'm never quite comfortable with that term, but take away from just the technical side. How do we build in that creativity, that risk? What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's first of all, it starts with training, doing some workshops, teaching those skills that you need, the critical thinking, the decision-making trees, root cause analysis. I think you need to do hard skills to give people the tools that they need to be able to innovate and take those risks and to be able to calculate those risks, right? And then you need the culture of trust so that, hey, yeah, go ahead and try that idea. And if it falls flat, it falls flat. It's okay. I think you've got to allow people to make mistakes and that's how they're going to grow. Obviously, if it's a big project that's cost millions of dollars or, there's got to be some oversight, but you've been through this before, the situational leadership and in the quadrants where you're in that, directive stage and you go to the coaching stage and all that, right? It's understanding that when you create that culture of risk, you also have to understand the person's competency. So how competent that person is that you're giving this project to, and you're saying, this is your project, and you can go ahead and do as you see fit. Make sure they have the competency to do that. And if they don't, then let them know. I'm going to check in with you all along the way. It might seem like I'm micromanaging you, but I want to help you learn this skill. So the next project, I can delegate a little bit more to you. I mean, it's just creating that culture of, trust me, I'm going to get you there. And then you're going to get yourself there after we're done.
I suppose there's a, especially as we get older and people may a little bit more protective in their roles. If they're in a job, there is probably a great desire to play it safe at times, and especially with their teams. So is it the emerging leaders that we need to work with to allow them to have that creativity and think slightly differently? Or is it kind of those more experienced leaders and say, if we keep playing it safe, this is where we're going?
I think it's a combination. I think you need to do generational training. I think that, we need to make sure that each generation that's in the workplace is working together and understanding that each generation has their strengths that they bring to the table. And how do you draw upon those strengths and not say, well, I know better, I've been doing this for 30 years. This is the way we've always done it, versus someone looking at it going, wait, I think we can do it this way. How do we help them communicate and come together? So I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's, getting people together. Again, Graham, it's communication, right? It's just communication. It's not that hard.
It is if we don't know it. That's probably the key. Is the one of the things that's maybe obvious to you and I, because we're working with so many different companies, is just looking at it just ever so slightly out. These aren't big shifts, but looking at it slightly in a different way. We're talking about risk. We're talking about movement. We're talking about different things that are happening in teams, even though it's some of it's obvious. We're going to have our final break. When we come back, I'm curious, really curious now, Sandra. What's kind of some of the things that's not worked for you? We talk about things that have worked for us all the time. Our resumes are full of all these successful things, and we did this, we did that. I'm going to be curious in business. Kind of what's maybe not worked or you would change ever so slightly. And we'll also dig in just a little bit more in this risk culture, how we get that feeling of being able to be creative, as every one of the biggest companies in the world do. You're listening to talkradio.nyc. My name's Graham Dobbin. We've got Sandra Kearney with us from Human Power Solutions, and you're listening to The Mind Behind Leadership. We'll be back after these.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
In a post-COVID world, you may have many unanswered questions regarding your health. Are you looking to live a healthier lifestyle? Do you have a desire to learn more about mental health and enhance your quality of life? Or do you just want to participate in self-understanding and awareness? I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each Thursday, I will tackle these questions and work to enlighten you. Tune in every Thursday at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will be Frank About Health to advocate for all of us.
Calling all pet lovers.
Pet Avengers, assemble!
On the Professionals and Animal Lovers show, we believe the bond between animal lovers is incredibly strong. It mirrors that bond between pets and their owners. Through this program, we come together to learn, educate, and advocate.
Join us live every Wednesday at 2 p.m. at talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to the Mind Behind Leadership. Sandra, you're not even dancing to the music this time. I'm disappointed.
Sorry.
Disappointed. So curious. We talk about risks. We talk about creating that culture. But risks have inherently might go right or wrong. They could go either way. It's just us. Nobody else is listening. You can tell me what's not worked for you.
When I've tried to do everything all by myself, when I've not asked for help, and I've not seen where I've been too proud or too afraid to say, I don't understand this.
Is that afraid? Is that curious again? Is this a personal thing you're afraid, or is that a culture that you were working with that you couldn't say that?
So there was one where I was not able to say what I thought. So that was a really terrible thing, I think, because, it ended up that I didn't stay. Here I am now. And then the other side of it is, just confidence in myself. I was afraid to look stupid. Which is so silly.
So what kind of thoughts can you give? We'll have leaders sitting in here. We'll have people who've got teams there. What do we think is the first stage to create that environment where it's safe to be creative, safe to have ideas, but also safe to make mistakes?
I think starting off with little things, little projects, little initiatives, just to take the baby steps, not do something really, we're gonna change 180 degrees and go this way. What about one small little change that we can make? Let's see how that works. What's your idea about this? And let them take it. So that's what I think. I think it's if it's not in your culture right now, teaching your leaders how to delegate, teaching them how to step back and say, let them see how it goes, but not with a huge project. Just start with something small.
Every leadership program I'm working with, we talk about delegation, and this is actually one of the problems I think we've got is we use words like delegation, and there's all of a sudden there is this inbuilt 20, 30, 40 year, however old we are, idea of what that actually means, rather than looking at what a process is that pulls other people in. Completely agree with that creativity, take the small steps. I remember I was working with one company. I said, there's always an opportunity to do something slightly differently. There's always a slightly different way if we ask people to do it. And they said, there isn't, Graham, there isn't, not for us. I forgot I was working with a nuclear processing plant. They had to be quite precise, which was, fairness was I put my hands up and said, okay, maybe sometimes the process just needs to be followed. We had an interesting discussion here, where could we be creative? And they actually came up with a whole lot of things around the process, how they worked with each other, how they could be creative and take a few risks. They couldn't take a risk in the process. Which I get that. So we talk about pharma, we talk about nuclear processing or huge manufacturing plants like cars, etc. We get it that we can't, go out and just take risks, but around the team, around the communication, how they work together, yes, we can. So it's making that. So just in case anybody's listening, saying, yeah, that's okay for another company, but not for us. I think the provocation I would have here is, how could you take those risks? Where do you have that little bit of creativity? What advice would you give yourself then? We've spoken about kind of chemistry, you fell into hospitality, you've done fitness, you've gone away and got a degree in organizational leadership, you started up your company, you've started up more than one company. What advice would you give an 18-year-old Sandra?
So I have got 3 kids, and one of mine is graduating from college and one is 2 years out of college. I'm going to frame it around them. My daughter's working for a big company, right? A big financial company right now. And the advice that I've given to both of them, my older boy does technical stuff. He works in manufacturing. The younger 2 are both just getting started in their careers. My advice was to them, get in with a big company first. Get some they have great training grounds. You're going to get the training, the development, you're going to network, with these, you're going to build your network up with these people and just put yourself out there. And my daughter has taken that to heart. And she is just, she's in a call center at a big financial company, and but she's doing the book club, she's networking, she's making bowling nights for her team, like she's organizing those. My younger son is, looking at a couple of big companies, and they've got sales training programs. So that's, you can have a passion and go after what you want, but get some foundational stuff first. And some of these big companies have a lot of really good foundational training to learn, to help them learn. And then, then 5 years, 6 years, 7 years out, she'll want to open a coffee shop, but she's going to have a lot of things behind her in order to give her a really solid foundation.
It's interesting. I wonder about our industry. Could you go straight from college and go into organizational development, or what's the dangers of doing that? Rather than saying that you can't, what's kind of the dangers of what's the benefits of not?
I think having the experience. I mean, I don't know if coming out of college I could have done what I'm doing now without all the life experiences that I've had. I don't think it's impossible. But I think when you're coming out of college, you might be coming at it from an academic standpoint.
Yep.
Less of the experience standpoint. And I think for you and I, we've had a bunch of experiences, so we can share a lot of stories,
Yep.
So I think, and that stories really resonate with people when you're talking about a concept. I don't think it can't not be done, but give yourself a little experience first.
I suppose it's about awareness again, kind of aware of what we don't know, and coming out and then being curious about finding out what it's really like. Absolutely right. I've learned more from my bruises than my trophies. I always say that, there are lots of things we can turn around and say that we've done or we've achieved, or clients we've worked with. But if you're in sales, the ones I've learned most from is the ones that I've lost that I thought I was going to win. Or the programs that don't quite hit the mark, and we've got to go back in and do something slightly different, because to suggest that everything hits the mark would be false. That's just not the case. We're dealing with humans, but being able to, the more experience we get, is being able to kind of navigate through that. What do you think the biggest myth about this? Because there's a lot of misperceptions about this industry, about kind of the approaches to leadership. What do you think is the biggest myth?
I think what you just said. I mean, that it's not effective. When you talk about these essential skills or soft skills, that why bother? I think that's the biggest. I think people are not understanding, how important this part is.
Yeah.
You
mentioned earlier, and we've only got 3 or 4 minutes to the end, but you mentioned earlier that something about that when you knew enough, you were able to do something. How do you know when you know enough? This is kind of a question that seems to come up regularly with people not taking action. How do you know?
So it was more of like, I didn't know enough, so I wanted to learn more. So I think I have like I never know enough, but now I know enough that I can go and talk to someone intelligently and ask the right questions. So I think it's as you get more confident and you continue to learn and listen to podcasts and, read books and just continue to feed yourself personal development wise, both personally and professionally, to help yourself grow. So I think we should all be continuous learners. I mean, that's a buzzword, but it truly, one of those things. And it's when you feel confident and when you can see a change in someone, something that you did. I think it's pretty cool.
One of the things that jumps out, completely in agreement, one of the things that jumps out for me is that a leader doesn't need to know everything.
Yeah.
You don't need to know everything. They kind of need to know where to get the answers from, and maybe even have an opinion on most things, but not be the smartest person in the room. Because that's what can make a huge difference. Finally, very final question. When will you know that you know enough?
When I'm dead.
It's a trick question, Sam. It's a trick question. Probably we'll never be able to get it. Here's the thing. So what's come out of today? Common myth is that we need to know everything, or it's always as it is. One of the big things that's jumped out is about risk taking. We need to take appropriate risks and build a culture that allows that. And data is absolutely huge. Gathering as much data as possible is on our people. Any final thoughts?
I'm excited to see what people are doing,
Mhm.
that we're getting more and more calls for those emerging leaders, and that middle management, we're getting more and more calls for that. So I think that people are seeing that how valuable training is on this side. So I'm super encouraged by what's happening right now.
Sandra Kearney, thank you so much for being open, honest, and as a leader should be, vulnerable, as always. Sandra Kearney from Human Power Solutions. You've been listening to The Mind Behind Leadership. Thank you so much for Dylan Nelson keeping us right in the background. We'll see you again next week for another episode of The Mind Behind Leadership. Have a good evening and a good day. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me.